Okay? So like I said, scatter plot is just a graph with points plotted, and it's showing a relationship between two sets of data. Just like when we talked about unit rate, we're comparing two pieces of information. We're comparing the distance of eyes, or the distance those robots' eyes are apart, and the height of the robots, right? So here in this one, we're analyzing two things. We're analyzing the hours spent studying for a test versus the grade that student got on the test. Very interesting analysis here. So, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to make a prediction. So right here, before we do anything, take a look at this. And you don't even have to take a look at the table. We're comparing the amount of time you spend studying and the score you get on a test. Make a quick prediction or assumption about what relationship those two ideas are going to have, right? If you study more, do you get a lower score? If you study less, do you get a lower score? I don't know. You make a prediction right there in that first little line right here in section A.
Wait, are we talking for ourselves or for the...
Yeah, you're doing this yourself. So we're just writing a prediction down under A, right here, right here. Writing down a prediction for what kind of relationship we're going to see between these two ideas.
I actually never studied for a test.
That's okay. That's a great point that we're going to talk about.
Is it possible for you to alright, so I'm supposed to practice in band, but I don't.
Mm-hmm.
Is that possible that I still sound good? Like, I don't sound bad?
Great question. It depends on your natural abilities, right? Some people are literally born knowing how to play the piano. It's just like an instinct, right? If you have that, you probably don't need to practice a lot. But that's such a rare thing, you probably don't.
I think it's because I can play by ear.
Yeah, if you can play by ear.
My brother can.
Yeah, that's like what I'm talking about. If you have that special skill, that's not really something that can be taught. That's kind of an innate skill. So that's really cool if you can do that. I'd still recommend practicing. Anyone want to share their prediction? What do we think? Jocelyn, go for it. The more you study, the better the grade on the test. Anyone get a prediction somewhat similar to what Jocelyn just said? Go ahead and raise your hand if you got something somewhat similar to that. Perfect. Did anyone write something different? Just out of curiosity? Yeah, Rashayla, what did you write? Okay, that's fine. Anyone want to share what they wrote that might have been a little different? That's okay. I think we all came to the same conclusion here, right? The more you study, the better grade you're going to get on the test. Now, we got some great questions. Is it possible for me to not study for a test at all and still get a decent grade on it? Yes, some of you may have done that before, right? Is it also possible that I spend 10 hours studying and still fail the test? Yes, that's absolutely possible too. And some of you, unfortunately, may have had that experience already as well, right? You spend all this time studying and it doesn't translate to the test. So the reason why this is important is because, like we said in the Desmos, it's all about perspective, right? Everybody has a different perspective on things in the same way that everybody has different abilities when it comes to studying and taking tests. Some people just aren't good at taking tests, right? If you have test anxiety, it's a very real thing. And some people are just really not good at studying. If you have trouble focusing or staying on task or just starting a task, you might have difficulty studying, right? So there's so many factors that play into this that we can't say for sure the more you study, the better grade you're going to get. We can just make a prediction, right? We can assume that on average, the students that study more are probably going to get better grades. But it's not so cut and dry. It's not an exact science, right? Everything we're talking about is relative, okay? So that's great for those predictions. Thank you for those of you who brought those up. Now what we're going to do is we're going to make a scatter plot right down here on this graph. Some of you have already started that. If you haven't, let's go ahead and start doing that now. So the x-axis, we've got hours spent studying. And the y-axis, we've got our test grade. How do I know what points to plot? Well, there's a table full of them right above, right? So if we take this first point, 0, 75, I'm going to zoom in on the graph just so we can all see. The first point on there is 0, 75, right? So I'm going to go 0 on the hours spent studying, I'm going to go right up in between 70 and 80, and there's my first point. Now my next point, close that. My next point is 0.5 comma 80. So we're going to go to 0.5 on the x-axis. It'll be in between 0 and 1. We're going to go up to 80, and we're going to make a dot. So far, it looks pretty linear, right? Go ahead and fill in the rest of the dots and see what kind of graph you get. Let's go point by point, plot those points. What's up, everyone? Right now we're plotting all these points on this graph. Good observation, Jordan. That's all these points here?
Oh, it's just the auto.
Yeah, we're not just making a line, folks. We're plotting all these exact points. Yeah.
Oh, can I go to the bathroom?
Yeah, my bad. Very nice, looks good. So right now we're just plotting all these points, right? So 0, comma 75, we'll go 0, up to 75 and make it done. Great plot. You got your line. Very nice. That was good. Great job, Elizabeth, Hannah. It's great so far. We only got a couple more points. Nice job too. Think better, Brandon. Looks good. Okay. So, for those of you who finished plotting, great. If you're still plotting, go ahead and continue. Did we get something linear here when we put all these points together?
No.
No, we definitely didn't, right? However, is there a relative pattern that we see from this information?
Yes.
Yes? What is that pattern, Noah?
It increases.
What increases? You got to be more specific.
The test score, the test grade.
The test grades increase?
Yeah.
Based on what?
Based on the hours spent studying.
Oh, so you're saying that the more hours you study, typically, based on this information, the higher grade you're going to get on the test. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay, good. That's perfect. So what we're going to do now is answer number 1. What trend do you see in the data? Go ahead and underline trend. Okay, and trend is just another word for pattern. Math is all about patterns, and this lesson is no different. We're looking for the pattern of all these points. Where's my answer key? Yes. Go ahead, yeah. Let's see, and then we got this one and that one. Okay. So your scatter plot should look something like that. Not something like that. Should look exactly like that. And we can see that it looks like there's a pretty close to linear relationship here. Right? That's almost a straight-ish line. And that trend is going upwards, right? We've got a positive relationship here. The more hours you spend studying, the higher your grade on the test is. Right? So a trend we see in the data, we could write that out. We could say the more hours you spend studying, typically the higher the higher grade you're going to get on the test. Right? Now let's look at number 2. 'Cause number 2 is a little bit trickier. Can someone read out what number 2 is asking us for everyone? Or want to go for it? Beautiful, thank you. Do you think the grade associated with studying for 10 hours would follow this trend? Before we write anything, I want to talk about this. What do we think? Anyone got any thoughts on this?
Yes.
Yeah? Faizan, what are your thoughts on this?
Wait, is it before we write the trend or after we write the trend?
So I'm not writing it. We're talking about it, and then you're writing whatever I'm saying. Okay? I'm not just going to feed you whatever you're going to write. So if you haven't been writing at this point, let's go ahead and get doing on that. Okay? Yeah, Noah. Sure. What do you guys think? Do you think the grade associated with studying for 10 hours would follow this trend, Jordan?
No. Yeah.
Jordan says yeah. Who said no over here? Blake says no. Jordan, why do you say yeah?
Because in the chart, the more hours you study, except for the lower usually it goes up.
Okay, so you mentioned besides this point, right? You're talking about. We'll get to that point in a second. But in general, with the rest of this graph, the more you study, the higher score you get, right? What score did the person who studied for 3 hours get? 100%, right? And they only studied for 3 hours. Blake, why did you say no? Why did you say no? That the grade associated with studying 10 hours would not follow this trend.
Because it's not really consistent.
Tell me more about that. What do you mean?
Because some of them would go up and down. It's really like, you can't really predict on what's going to happen next.
Okay, so we see that we've got kind of an inconsistent bit of information going on here, right? Some of them are going up, some of them are going down, right? But let's think about this graph for a second, right? I appreciate both of you. Thank you for that. It's great that we got different ideas. Let's go ahead and do something here. I'm going to extend this graph until we get to 10 hours. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Here's 10 hours spent studying. Let's assume, based on this information, right, we know that the more you study, typically the better grade you're going to get, right? So let's just assume here, if you studied for 10 hours, you know everything like the back of your hand, right? What score are you probably going to be expected to get on the test? 100, right? If you spend 10 hours studying, you probably know everything, right? So let's plot that point. We'll go 10, comma, 100. Does that fall in line with this trend that we discovered?
No.
No, why not? Why does that not fall in line? Think about it. If this was one big graph, right? If this was all, this was all part of the graph or whatever. Why is this point so far out? Why is it so far away from the rest of our data? Because it's 10 hours. Did anyone even get close to studying for that long? No. The longest someone else studied was 4 hours, and they got a 90. The person that studied for 3 hours got 100. So would you say it's maybe, and again, this all depends on the student, but can we assume that it's not necessary to study for that long for this test?
Yes.
Yeah, we can assume that that's not really necessary. You'll probably still rank high up here, but we can only get to 100. Right? That's our cap. We can't go over 100 on a test.
Extra credit.
Unless you got extra credit, right? But we're assuming there is none for this. So this point right here is called an outlier. O-U-T-L-I-E-R. Outlier. You may also hear people call it an outlier. I don't know what the correct pronunciation is. I think it's outlier because I think it's French. But I say outlier because this point lies outside of the rest of the information. Okay? So that's what an outlier is. It's basically one point that's just way far away and isn't supported by our predictions or our trends. This point here would definitely be an outlier because not many people are going to have 10 hours to study. Is there another outlier on this graph that doesn't really fit with our trend? Hannah? Yeah, the one for 4 hours, right? This point here. This point's a little bit further off of our trend. Why might that be? One more time? There we go. They spent a long time studying, but got an okay score. Now, obviously, a 90 would be a great score normally, but in this context, it's an okay score, right? Because the person that didn't study at all still got a C+, right? They still got a 75. So it can't be that hard of a test, right? So this person here, again, like I said, it's all relative. Everyone's different. This is not an exact science. This person here, maybe they're really good at studying, but not so great at taking tests. Maybe they made one subtraction error or an addition error or something, and that brought their grade down. There's so many different factors that play into this. All we can do is assume basically whatever we can from the information that we're given. And we have to make sure that we point out when we have data points that are not following our trend. All right? So, let's take a look at the back. We're going to continue this in class. This is not homework. Matter of fact, let's stop right there. So we're going to continue this packet tomorrow in class. Again, this is our substitution for notes. We're going to stop it right there. You should still be able to do CC, whatever it was. What was it, 15?